Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Schneider, and I want to welcome you to today's episode 178 of Say What, where we talk about the threats to our children in the public school system, including the war on that minority of school board officials fighting to protect both our children and parental rights. As someone on the front lines of this conflict, Sonja Shaw is well known, or at least she should be. Hailing from Southern California, the epicenter in the parental rights struggle, Sonja was first elected in 2022 to the Chino Valley Unified School District Board in Southern California, where she continues to serve as president. A parent herself of two school-aged children, she and her family make their lives in the community that she serves. Sonja, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it today.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Sonja, you were elected to the board and very quickly named president during a time of existing and emergency policy turbulence, not just in Chino, but really across the state. Schools were still emerging from COVID shutdowns with controversy swirling around vaccine mandates. But did you ever imagine that the issue you are known for, parental rights, garnering the national attention that it has?
Yeah, I honestly could say 4 years ago, I never seen this coming. I mean, most of you know, I didn't even know what a school board was back then. Just like everybody else, that just go through the normal process of day to day providing for your family. I saw a problem when the world shut down, and when it started to go back to normal, our kids were still put under, all these things that we didn't agree with. And that's when I kind of got involved and realized, wow, this is intense, or it's pretty bad. And, we come from a community that has a lot of values and morals over here, and just seeing over and over and over these laws being made in the hands of, our school district being tied, it really broke my heart, and I knew something had to change.
Well, I guess that begs the question, what was your first inkling of running for school board? What caused you to even consider it?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I kind of led a grassroots parent group. It was a bunch of us who were just upset with, like how you mentioned, with all the potential mandates and all these things that, they were masking the kids when the whole world went back to normal, but yet the kids in school were required to wear these masks. While I pulled my kids out, there was kids that weren't safe. I was delivering, blankets and pizza and things to 5-year-olds that were put outside and denied an education during that time. And it broke my heart. When I found out there was a school board, we quickly started attending every meeting. We begged for, to be part of the solution. We were ignored. We were pushed out. We were treated poorly. Then we realized there was a lot of laws being made. We followed that process. Then someone said an election's coming up. We started attending GOP meetings, which most of us had no clue what that even was.
Yeah.
And we looked for some candidates. We had 2 seats coming up, and we looked for both, and we found one. And then the other one, we were actively looking while learning trustee areas, because our community, this election cycle will complete our trustee areas. Some communities are still at large, but we started learning the map system. I remember attending a State of the City event, which I had no clue what that was. I was just invited by somebody in the community who had an extra ticket. And I remember meeting a nice woman from the local GOP. And she said, you need to find 2 candidates. And I'm like, oh no, like we only have one. Got on that Zoom call with all of our moms and the one dad. We called it our leadership group of our organization. Mind you, it was really not organized. It was just a bunch of parents trying to find some solutions to help our kids. And I remember everybody calling. I said, one of you is going to run and we're going to get behind you, calling out every address. And the last one was mine. And how was I? And my house is actually like on the line. And I mean, I'm more of that person. If I'm going to tell everybody else to do it, I'm either doing it or I'm going to do it with them. And so when it came to that, it was Shaw 2022. And I remember coming upstairs to my husband because, I had to obviously go consult with him, and it was already 11:30 at night. And I'm like, babe, I think we're going to run for school board. And he was just like, no, we don't live in that area. And I'm like, actually, our house is on the line. Huh. And he goes, well, then, that, as he said something along the lines of, then God opened the doors and it is what it is. Right. And the rest was history.
Wow.
So
Well, now Chino Valley, I think, was the first public school district in California to enact what's called a parental notification policy. And before we get into the details of what happened related to these policies, maybe you can describe for our viewers what is a parental notification policy and why did the board feel the need to implement one?
Yes, Mark, great question, because a lot of people think we just pulled it out of nowhere. But as I stated, our parent group was following these laws and these bills, right? Realizing there wasn't really any that any of us liked. I mean, requiring tampons in boys' restrooms. There was a bunch of stuff that was just horrific. And when I got on board, I think it was only like 2 months in, and an assembly member, a newer one named Bill Aselli, brought in 1314 and AB 1314, and they wouldn't even give it a hearing. But I'm still following bills, right? So I'm very aware of what was going on. And I said, let's write a resolution as a school district to support this bill, because that's what we were begging our school board at the time to write resolutions or call and try to give another voice besides our parents alongside us when we were, upset about something that was coming through as a bill or a law. And I remember bringing it forward. And with that said, most school boards till this day in California still have what I call as a secret policy in regards to this situation when a child wants to conceal their identity, their gender identity, which I don't even like that word because I feel like it's either, it should be based on sex, from their parents. So most school boards across California still have what I call the secret policy, and that is a recommendation of the CSBA, which most people, just so they know, it's the California School Board Association. So members of the California School Board across California usually pay into this, and this is where you get like your recommendation for your policies. Some of them are great. They keep you up to date and they make sure you're, compliant with the law. But we saw with this one, it was wrong. So, Of course, I wanted to support Bill Aselli's bill, and the rest is history, right? And here we are.
Now, before you actually enacted the policy, which the board, by the way, duly voted on, I think that's called representative government the last time I looked. Did you have any idea of what percentage of parents in the district actually supported the notification policy? I assume it was high since the board's elective composition is conservative.
Yeah, most of the noise we got, besides maybe a handful of local people, and mind you, a lot of them aren't even parents, most of the people that were fighting against this were all outside special interest groups and a lot of people who don't even have children. But I will say what happened was when Bill Aselli did this and he was denied a hearing, he came to our meeting and he said, guys, I have good news, bad news. Bad news, they wouldn't give me a hearing. Good news, you guys can develop a policy of your own. And he told us how he appreciated us coming and, wanting a resolution to support his bill. When he said that, it was like a light bulb that went off on my head. Like, why aren't we bringing a policy forward? Why are we just, bringing a resolution to support a bill? Of course, we would want to go into law because this is obviously something that these people who are trying to separate the family unit are really strung on. But I will say, with that said, the group that developed this policy, me included, we had Bill Aselli, we had attorneys, we had, Real Impact, we had a bunch of grassroots organization leaders in there, a really great group of people. And they, through Real Impact, the Rasmussen poll was done. And you've seen that, right? 82% of California voters voted in favor of having a policy that informs the parents of these things, because social transition is a real thing, and they're pushing it through into our school system. The unions are fighting and they're dumping money in against parents in this. And with that said, I know the majority of our community supports that. That's why they haven't actively recalled me. They just threaten these things. If they knew that the community didn't support me, they would have got rid of me a long time ago. Let's be real. But they can't, because the only way they win is on lies, right? And that's how they're trying to twist. I've seen stuff, Mark. They say, oh, Sonja Shaw's against parental rights. And I'm like, what in the world is this? And the sad part is people who don't know generally tend to believe anybody who first gets to them. And they know this. And that's what breaks my heart is, look, there's an agenda. We've seen it. Why do school boards across California have a policy that says, in regards to this specific situation, a parent cannot know unless a child puts it in writing and gives permission that
Mm.
they can. That's absolutely insane. No one sends their kids to school that I know of, that I've met till this day, that says, oh yeah, go ahead, school, keep a secret with me, keep a special
Yeah.
relationship with my child that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. And maybe there is those bad parents, but that's not the majority of the parents that I believe are, at least in our community and in California.
So just to clarify, Assemblyman Asali, he was trying to get a hearing for a bill that he was sponsoring to actually make it illegal to exclude these kinds of things for parents to know about their own children. And the California legislature would not even grant him a hearing on the issue. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. They wouldn't even give him a hearing. And that goes again, they want to claim democracy, but yet they don't even offer transparency in the community and fair hearings. Just like when we have board meetings, we're allowing the community to pour in. They can email us. We're listening to them. They don't do that in Sacramento. They have the super majority of people who have no best interest for the families in California. And it's clear. Why not have a hearing? Why not have people come and speak about it? Why not allow their voice? You may not agree with it, but you're elected in that position. I know our assemblyman, my assemblyman that's elected in our community, he quickly wrote a letter, against the parental notification. And he had parents begging to meet with him, tell him, hey, why are you doing this?
Mm.
And essentially, I mean, I hope the voters start to realize, because I will say this, people like me 4 years ago never got involved in elections. I didn't even know I had a moral obligation to be involved. But I hope now through all of this, whether, defeats are in court or whatever they may be in Sacramento, I think we still have an opportunity for the normal day-to-day person to get involved and get these people out of there and have people who actually care about families and the children in California. And that's where I still, have the hope right now.
Now, Tony Thurmond, the state's superintendent of schools, paid you a visit on the eve of the policy's enactment, the parental notification policy's enactment. But I don't suppose he was there to support the policy, was he?
No. And Tony Thurmond and our community have a history, because remember that time I told you we were trying to seek solutions during the shutdown and after the shutdown, the bus driver shortage, that's a national thing. And with the late start, us parents and even, with other situations with school, we've reached out to Tony Thurmond's office. So we were very aware of him. But let's rewind a little bit. During the election time, he came down and walked with the person that we unseated because, quote unquote, he knew that this election really meant something against, just us moms running for school board. So when he came, I thought it was very interesting when he said parents reached out to him and he was there to help the parents and the children that reached out to him. And I'm thinking, okay, so for a couple years, we have emails, we have phone calls. You even threw us on some random Zoom calls, with when we heard him trying to get onto iHeartRadio and stuff. It just random things. And here he is pretending to be there as a parent. He said, I'm here as, a father. And I'm like, on our taxpayer dollars, you're here with, your security and everything else. And God knows what hotel you stayed in and what food you're eating on our dime, to fight against us, the parents. And, Mark, he said something over and over. He said, children have a right to privacy from their parents. And that's what really, I'm glad he did it. I'm glad he went on record. I'm glad he came down and, put himself on that, because potentially he could be the next governor. And now people have the opportunity through this process to see who he really is. Right?
Absolutely. And while CVUSD led the way, you weren't the only district that passed similar notification policies. In fact, there was something of a flood of other school districts in the aftermath of you guys passing the policy that others did as well. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I want to say up to 13 that I'm aware of. It was 12 or 13, could possibly even be more, because people were adopting either the same policy or similar policies. And at the same time, they were rescinding that policy that we allowed them to be aware of, because some of them came in around the same time as me, that they were not aware that they had what we call the secret policy. And it's been really sad to see what the unions and special interest groups have done to those parents, essentially, that ran for those positions. They came after them hard. I mean, we've seen it, Mark. You've seen it. It's really sad and upsetting that, that we're allowing this machine that's breaking the families up to even come near our children. But it is happening. I just hope more people realize they still have a voice and they still can do the smallest things to support those of us that are in trying to fight the good fight against this big machine. But yeah, it's really sad. We had Temecula, we had Orange, we had I want to say at least a handful up in Northern Cal that, I've been in contact with a lot of their board members up there as well. Some amazing people all across California that just want to do the right thing. And a lot of them either were new board members and they came in for the same reasons like when I came in, or they were existing board members that had no clue, and now that they know, I give them credit for doing the right thing, because the CDE, that's the California Department of Ed, they have made it very miserable for all of us that have done it. They have bullied us. They've threatened the district staff. They have done just some really nasty things, vile things that should never happen when it comes to just what? I mean, Mark, if you really think about what is happening, we just want to inform the parents that their kid wants to change their gender at school. Why should that even be an issue? And if the kid was truly in danger, how they try to call the kids in danger, well, then so you're allowing this dangerous environment, knowing that every day, at least this notification process would start the initiation to get whatever child they're claiming to be dangerous to safety, right? Because before you notify the parents, you ask those questions. Does your parents know? No. Why? Oh, they beat me. Or, oh, I'm just scared to tell them. Okay, well, guess what? We're mandated reporters. If the kid is being hurt, then what happens? We're able to report that and initiate an investigation. Unlike supposedly their way is just to keep sending that child that they claim is in danger back to the dangerous home every day. Like I'm really confused on where their thought process is on that, And I, Mark, I do want to mention this. Like, some people might say, oh, my kid's not doing that. I'm very aware. They're not dressing differently. They're not doing anything differently. Well, this policy also puts safeguards in place, because I've had a lot of parents who have, maybe girls that are considered what we would consider a tomboy. This has happened. And a teacher comes up to them, hey, Jessica, do you want me to call you he and him? That actually happens. These policies would not allow those inappropriate conversations, because if they did, they would have to notify the parents if the change was made, right? So it puts a safeguard in place over multitudes of different scenarios that could happen with a child. And once you plant that seed, maybe that child might not want to change it then, but that's an innocent child. And they go home thinking, I mean, this is exactly what a parent has told me over a few parents. My child then starts asking me, Mom, am I a boy? Mom, why did my teacher think this? Right? And these are things that happen. You cannot make these things up. And that's what breaks my heart, is something needs to change. We have what I call union activists, and then we have great teachers. Unfortunately, the union activists are funded heavily. We see it all across the nation. These unions have tons of money. They're focused on elections. You've seen the president of one of the biggest unions in the nation say, we have to win all things. What is all things? Your all things should be making sure teachers have fair wages and they have good working conditions. That's what all things to me a union should be. And we have great unions that do great things, but these teacher unions have been taken over by activists. And it's clear, because they teach you how to decorate your classroom, which is not educational. It's propaganda and indoctrination stuff that's hung up. They come after people like me. I was talking to a parent yesterday. What is it that I have done so extreme that they're going door to door? We have Ring camera videos that parents have sent to me that Sonja does this, this, and this. She's an extremist. Mark, what have I done? Brought a notification forward that our board majority voted to notify parents if their child wants to change their gender at school? That's common sense. That shouldn't even have been an issue, right? Like, the parents should have always been involved.
I wanted to ask you about that, because it didn't take long before California actually made good on its threats and sued in state court to actually enjoin the measure that was duly passed. And recently, That same state court issued a permanent injunction against the policy.
Yeah.
After the ruling, the state's AG, Rob Bonta, declared, and I'm quoting now, the decision from the court to grant a permanent injunction and declaratory relief against Chino Valley Unified's initial forced outing policy is a win for all students in Chino Valley and across the state. I don't imagine either you or most parents in the district see it that way.
No, and he's saying it, a win for students. That doesn't even make sense because students are part of a family. So it's not a win for a family when you separate a student from their family and you tell them that their family is dangerous, which Rob Bonta has went on national TV and said that, parents are dangerous, right?
Yeah.
But I will say this, while he declares a victory on that part, we still have a policy in place that informs parents of any unofficial or official changes. So really, what did he win? He didn't win anything. And on top of that, we also won in court that a child does not have privacy rights against their own parents, right? So while he declares a victory, I quickly want to point out his victory is just gaslighting California and it also is proving who they are. Because they fought over and over and over that a student has a right to privacy from their parents. They lost that even in California court. I will say, were we disappointed about the actual policy that they said that we have a permanent injunction on? Okay, that I see that. But what about all the other school districts across California that still have it and they still can have it? How does that even work?
Well, as I understand it, the court's decision relied basically on the premise that a trans child's safety outweighed the right of parents to know about their gender identity. And to help justify its decision, the court stated, and again, this is a quote, "It is undisputed that there is nothing wrong or pathological about being transgender or gender nonconforming in and of itself." Well, with all due respect to Judge Sachs, that's quite an astonishing statement because it's anything but undisputed. Today, as I understand it, some 20 school districts are reviewing their options, as you stated earlier, to pass these parental notification policies. And Dr. Stephen B. Levine, who's a psychiatrist and early proponent of transgender medical interventions, he actually helped lead the World Professional Association for Transgender Health and was the chairman of its International Standard of Care Committee. But after years of serving in that capacity and witnessing the evidence out of conscience, he resigned his position. And in expert testimony, he stated, "Sex is not assigned at birth by humans visualizing the genitals of a newborn. It's not imprecise. Rather, it is clear, binary, and determined at conception." A publication of the federal government's, the United States federal government's National Institute of Health, accurately summarizes the scientific facts. And again, this is a quote. "Sex is a biological classification encoded in our DNA. Every cell in your body has a sex, making up tissues and organs like your skin, brain, heart, and stomach. Each cell is either male or female depending on whether you are a man or a woman." That statement was made in 2022. And Dr. Levine goes on to warn about the harmful effects of so-called puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones on fertility, bone density, brain development, and psychological well-being. And rather than recommend social transition in grade school, the mental health professional, he says, must focus attention on the child's underlying internal and familial issues, close quote. But in the meantime, Sonja, the California legislature recently passed into law Assembly Bill 1955, which bars all California schools from notifying parents or even being honest about it if asked by a parent about their child's gender identity or use of preferred pronouns. And there's no age limit on this prohibition, so that if an 8-year-old begins the transitioning process at an elementary school, officials there are now instructed on pain of law to keep parents in the dark. Does passage of this law surprise you at all? Were you ready for this?
Sad to say, but I knew that this was going to be the case.
You knew it was going to happen.
I wasn't surprised. I don't think any of us were surprised. I'm not surprised by AB 1955 either, because the group that went to Chris Ward was it was born here in Chino, was with the co-founder of the one that actually we unseated her. So she founded an organization. She's not a mother. She's not a parent. And she founded an organization that worked very closely with the assembly member and other special interest groups. So I knew this was all coming. We all knew this was coming. That's why, we even updated our contract long before 1955 passed to initiate a lawsuit against the state when it did pass, right? We knew it was going to pass. We just didn't know when Newsom was going to sign it. Now, the timing was slimy. He did it while, our former President Trump was, the attempted assassination. So while the news was all blasting that, he went and signed this into law to try to keep it quiet in a national level, because he knew that this would go national if they were to find out. But I'm not surprised. We knew that this was going to be a marathon. We knew the system is designed this way, Mark. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, the things I've seen, the things I have come to know, you can't unsee those. You can't unknow that. It's all by design. You see the community schools, those are to have clinics on campuses. What do you think those clinics are going to do? Planned Parenthood is partnering with them. I was my first 3 months into being a school board member. I went to the California School Board Association's event over in DC with all the California school board members. Well, not all of them, but any ones that chose. And we heard Javier Becerra. You know who he is, right? He was telling all of us California school board members to let him in. He has money. Let's put clinics on campuses. Now, why in the world would you need clinics on campuses, all while passing laws in California that allow 12-year-old and up to make their own medical decisions? And then they recently tried to pass in this past year. They were trying to reduce it down to, I think, 11 years old on some of the medical interventions that they want to call interventions. So it's really, really not surprising. It's sad. And I wish more parents would wake up and realize what's happening. We've trusted the system for far too long. And these people have destroyed public education. We're trying to stop what they're doing. So in hope we get one more child to safety. But it's really hard when you're in a system that is designed to support that. I will say, when I went to that last court hearing, I sat in that courtroom. I was the only parent in there. This is not just for obviously not just for my kids. It's for all kids. It's for California. And not one parent was in there. That was very discouraging, because you know what that shows the judge and other activists that may have been in that room, including the state's representation? There's nobody there fighting the good fight, right? So what does that do? That enables them to be bold in their actions. And I literally heard the judge say, I was discriminatory as a president towards Tony Thurman and the way I treated him. What did that have to do with the legality of the policy? And I'm not here. I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I've heard that. I heard my attorney's argument was they took an oath. They're protecting the Constitution. Parents' rights is a constitutional right. He said, not only did that board president violate her oath, the other three that voted in favor of this policy violated their oath, and they violated the parents' 14th Amendment right. And I'm over here like, this is our system? You hear it all the time. You see it on TV or newspapers about all these unfair rulings, right? You see it across the nation. But when you feel it firsthand, it's almost like, wow, what do we do at this point, right? But then you realize if you give in, that's exactly what they want. And we're still going to win things along the way. We won the argument that kids have a right to privacy from their parents. The CDE, they twisted the ed code and the interpretation to pin children against their parents. But we won that in court that says they cannot have privacy towards their parents. So to me, when you get things like that, we need to focus on those things and keep pushing forward, because they want our children. So how bad do we not want to let them have our children is what I tell parents. You either fight the good fight or you keep giving them increments, because that's how we know they win, right? By incremental wins, or we start winning by increments, right? And we keep going.
Yeah, and the legal battle is far from over. In fact,
Yeah.
America's First Legal has filed a challenge to AB 1955 in federal court. So the story is far from over. But Sony, obviously, you've had your detractors, including, not surprisingly, the Los Angeles Times, which accused you of carrying water for some far-right agenda that rejects the walls between church and state in public schools. You're aware of these statements, obviously.
Oh,
But
yeah.
but I would ask, and I think you would too, what underlies the conviction that you can choose your own gender, if not a metaphysical belief? Because there's no science behind it. And if it's not fact-based, that belief must be religious in nature, where in this case, one's self-expression becomes sort of the object of worship. It's almost a form of paganism. One thing's for sure, the state is now enforcing a form of ideological conformity. It's an orthodoxy, which the Supreme Court in 1943, in the case of West Virginia versus Barnett, has said government officials cannot impose. So there's hope that before the right court, prudential jurists will do the right thing and reverse some of these terrible decisions. And further to the point, I know you're familiar with another Southern California case involving the Escondido School District, which is about 90 miles south of you. There, just to let our viewers know, teachers were being forced to use their students' preferred pronouns in violation of their First Amendment rights. Mm-hmm. And in the Second Amendment complaint of the case is called Mirabelli versus Olson, evidence was submitted showing how woke human rights groups have prevailed upon school officials to support a student's gender transitioning by referencing what are called the Yogyakarta principles, which openly advances gender identity as a, quote, new belief system and a, quote, quasi-religious notion that asserts a sexed soul. In fact, so extreme are their positions that not even the UN has supported them. I don't suppose you've heard of these Yogyakarta principles that are religious in nature?
I haven't heard of that, but we've been saying for a long time, this is their religion. This is their ideology. And we all know across the nation, somebody's ideology technically has to rule, right? And that's what's happening right now. Their religion, their ideology is ruling, and it's cross everything. I mean, go back to the Mirabelli case. I am so proud and thankful for those teachers, including, Jessica Tapia over at Harupa Valley, because they stood up and said, no. We had it in our own district. When I was a parent sitting in a board meeting, they hid the policy under hundreds of pages, and we saw what we called compelled speech with the forced pronoun thing. And we had, thankfully, I reached out to Real Impact at that time. That is a leg of our church that does, the morally involved in the politics thing with Gina Gleason. And there was an attorney that wrote a letter to our school district. Mind you, I wasn't on the board. And right away, that previous school board president pulled the policy during that meeting, but it was said that she was going to bring it back after the election, which unfortunately for her, she didn't get to do that. But I'm going to go back again to saying most school districts have these policies that compel the speech of these teachers and force them into doing something that they don't believe in, right? So again, it's by design, and most people are not aware of that. So when these teachers get fired, technically the school district has that policy that they violated, right? So again, why is the school board association recommending policy of compelled speech? I will say again, it's all by design, Mark. It's all there, but most people just are not aware of it. I was not aware of it prior to 4 years ago. But you have to look at those things, right?
You do have to look at them. And Sonja, the LA Times, not surprisingly, again, also accused you of, quote, waging costly battles on fringe topics while ignoring the basic functions of a school district, like air conditioning and teacher vacancies. Do you think schools grooming children to gender transition is a fringe issue?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up.
According to Gallup, the percentage of American adults who identify as queer has doubled in just the last 10 years. Within Gen Z, those born during the mid-1990s, polling suggests that LGBTQ population doubled in just 4 years, from 10.5% in 2017 to 20.8% in 2021. That is over 1 in 5 of the entire generation of Americans. Have you seen evidence of this in the Chino Valley schools as well?
So recently we've had like some, again, I'll call them union activists come and fight, which are teachers in our district, come and fight to push the secrets against parents. I have a new policy coming out called the no deception policy, even by omission. And lo and behold, they're all there fighting against that, right? Which just says you cannot lie. You cannot lie to parents. So yeah, I do see this starting to happen, but again, it's by design because they're pushing it into curriculum. They're pushing it into the classroom. They're pushing it in by the decorations that they have on their walls. They're pushing it in by these union activist teachers developing or leading these groups and these clubs that are, pushing these ideologies onto the students. It's everywhere. And that's what I want parents to really see. Like, they talk about us wasting money. We didn't waste money. We had to respond to a lawsuit for being sued for just wanting transparency. But we quickly had Liberty Justice come to help us, thank God, because we wouldn't have been able to fight that good fight. But with that said, we have done everything possible as a district, as a majority of a school board, to protect our district from all these requirements that the state is trying to push into the classroom.
Yeah.
And Mark, kids are failing reading, writing, math. Why? Because we're making requirements for all these other things that should not be inside the classroom. Look, I don't want the schools teaching my kids about God. Heck no, would I ever trust them to teach them about Jesus and God? I'm not even saying put that into the classroom. I don't trust the system to do that. What I want the system to do is what it's actually was supposed to do. Teach our kids reading, writing, math, right? Critical thinking skills. Those are the things that our kids need, not all this other junk. You have all these other requirements that are being put in. I think Tony Thurmond is so proud of one that's recently been passed about media, identifying false media. That's going to be a requirement in high school. Like, false media? Are you kidding me? Most media out there is junk. Look what they're pushing. Look at the narrative. Look how it's bought. And we're going to now teach kids how to identify false media as a requirement in high school? Absolutely insane. These are ideologies. These are their religion that they're pushing on our children. And I think that's where parents need to be aware. Look, if you choose to send your kid to public school, be there every step of the way. Some of us want to put our kids in there so they can be light to others and they can, learn different skills on how to maneuver those things and maybe try to help other kids that are struggling around them. But then there's also those parents that have no clue what's happening. Look at the books. Mark, if I showed you yesterday what somebody showed me from the CTA magazine, the recent magazine, about this book that they were pushing into as a recommended book into the classroom, it's set up for like little kids, the way that the illustrations are. If you look at that person who wrote that book, you go to look at what they're about. He's drawing stuff with people upside down on a cross, people doing some sexual things in his drawings. These are people writing books that our teachers union is recommending. It's horrifying, like what they're doing to these children.
I wanted to ask you about that because the Chino Valley Board has also passed policies giving parents certain rights to challenge, I guess, what are called non-curriculum reading materials, mostly in the form of library books. What is that policy and how does it work exactly?
So we did have a previous policy and I wanted to strengthen it because it was brought to my attention that these books were actually in our libraries. So I'm like, okay, then we need a policy that strengthens this because obviously this sexual explicit material had gotten in somehow, right? So when you strengthen policy, it usually puts, again, safeguards, right? So, bad me putting, recommending, which was, again, supported by the board majority, who were all duly elected by the community in which we serve in. We passed a policy that strengthened that. So pretty much what happens is if a parent knows that there is a book in their kid's library or even a community member, it could be a concerned community member because technically, we are reminded over and over, they pay taxes that go into, our schooling. They can bring it to the principal's attention. So this is all local. I really, in my heart, believe in local control, right? Which obviously the state doesn't believe in that. So they locally take it to their principal in their area. Their principal then has so many days to determine if it is sexually explicit by nature. If it is, he brings it to the attention of the superintendent, who therefore turns around and then brings it to the board. And then the board, within so many days, I think it's 45, has to hold a hearing on if they're going to remove that book. There's nothing wrong with that. We allowed local all the way through, and then the board, just like everything else, puts their final stamp of approval on it, right? So it's not like the board is going in and saying, oh my God, pull that book. It's nasty. We don't want it. As much as I want to get that out of the hands of kids, we're allowing the community to be part of the process as they should. And if they don't believe that that book is appropriate for their kids, they're allowed to bring it to the principal's attention. Mind you, this has nothing to do with even mentioning the word sex. It has to be explicit. And I don't know if you've heard some of those board meetings. It is pretty disgusting that where shocking. Us adults can't even stomach it, but yet we can't stop. I can't stop them from saying it at a board
Adults
meeting.
don't want to hear it, but it's being taught to our children in classrooms. You're allowing it in the hands of a
child. I mean, we've seen Reverend John. He's traveling all over the nation, right? And I think he's having a documentary coming out about this whole situation. We have Karen England. She's dedicated her life to making sure people like myself in these positions are aware of these things. And we have amazing tools. Why not use them? Why is that such a controversial issue to get sexually explicit material out of the hands of kids? These people are strung again on putting it into your children's hands. Like, if you want to let your kid watch a rated R movie, if you want your kid to have a sexually explicit book, you have that opportunity at home, right? Why at school? Our kids need to read, write, do math. This is not like something so crazy and out of another book. It's so weird how this is such a controversial issue. But again, that's how strung up they are on pushing this into the hands of innocent children. And I hope through this process, people realize, what's going on.
George Orwell, I think, made a quote to the effect that in time, defending the truth will become a revolutionary act. And in that sense, Sonja, you are a revolutionary in the best sense possible. And in our closing minutes, I just wanted to ask you, what's next for CVUSD and Sonja Shaw in the fight to protect our kids and parental rights?
Well, Mark, the day-to-day is where we actually get the change made. These headliners, to me, they're just gifts given to the public to be aware of the bigger topic. It's really getting into these local elected positions and doing the work that you were elected to do. I will say, what's next? I have no clue. I just know that we're fighting the good fight. Whatever comes our way, I'm making sure that I bring it to the board's attention and our community's attention. I pray that, our community holds the majority that care about families and the safety of children in our board. We're fighting a really big fight. We have the unions and special interest money. Their boots are on the ground. They're knocking and lying to community members. If they switch our majority, I mean, it is what it is. I guess our community would allow that, but I just pray and hope that they don't. And I pray and hope the silent majority shows up and votes. I'll continue to still fight the good fight, wherever God puts me. If it's not in this position, I always say I'm not afraid to lose this position. I welcome whatever comes because I know that my yes will be given to God that the next morning. It's not changing. It's just where he'll have me. But other than that, I think we really need to focus on the bigger picture and keep uniting because Chino, Temecula, Orange, a couple of the ones up in Northern Cal, Maribelli, we can't do this alone. We have to unite as whole, right? We have to unite all across California and really make sure that our education system pushes back and it actually does what it's supposed to do, which is educate our children.
Well, I can't think of a better place to leave it than right there. Sonja Shaw, thank you so much for everything you do. And to our viewers, thanks for tuning in. If you would like to know more about this topic and more, you can visit our website at protectourkids.org or just pok.org and be sure to subscribe. And we'll see you next time on the next broadcast. And Sonja, I hope that you'll consider coming back sometime and give us an update on how the fight is going.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys and all that you do.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.